You're listening to the DJ Doran Show. I'm your host, DJ Doran. And today in the studio, I have one of my dearest and most sweetest friends in the LGBT publishing world. We hit it off from day one. I think the first hour of us meeting, we connected. And because of our mutual love of sexual innuendo and inappropriateness and saying what we think, we bonded immediately. And it's been like that for what, 2.5 years now, Mike?
At least, maybe. I think we're going on 3. I don't know. My mother might not be listening, so it might be okay.
3 years, for God's sakes. So, Michael, before we get into the conversation that we're going to talk about, tell everyone a little bit about what you do and what your role is.
So I am the founder and publisher of Q Salt Lake magazine, and we've been doing this is our 17th year. Actually, our birthday is coming up at the end of the month. And gosh, in a couple days now, that's fun. And we'll celebrate it all by ourselves. So, but yeah, I actually started magazines back in the early 90s. In fact, I had one newslettery kind of thing back in the 1980s. So I've been doing this a little while. Mostly it's me and up to 6 other people at any one time. Now it's just kind of me and part-time designer and a part-time editor.
So, Michael, being the publisher of Q Salt Lake, is also a member of the National Equality Media Association, which is NEMA. And we're both members of that organization. And that's sort of how we met. And that's sort of how we become friends. So NEMA is the nation's only not-for-profit media association. Would that be the right way? Publishers Association, would that be the right way to describe it? It's been around for about 6 years, and Michael is on the board of directors as well as some others. So let's talk a little bit about the current state of publishing, right? So that's what this show is about: current state of LGBT publishing. So I downloaded a few things, and I was perusing through this, but one of the things that this COVID-19 crisis has done is really hurting small local and regional publications. So how has it affected you, and how has it affected Q Salt Lake?
So the last issue that we put out was the April issue, and we found out we go to press on a Tuesday. We found out on Monday that Salt Lake City was being basically shut down, that all restaurants were now going to be takeout only, that a lot of our coffee shops and the bars and everything were just shut down the very next day. And so here I was basically sending files to the press saying, okay, here we go. And then come to find out and remember, wait a minute, 80% of our distribution is at all of these places that are being shut down. And so I spent the entire day going around and calling places who will actually distribute us, who don't normally do so. So we found a number of grocery stores to distribute us. We found a number of restaurants that, yes, they do have our publication in their lobby, but we actually specifically asked them, hey, when people call or do an online order, can they put in those notes, hey, please leave us a Q Salt Lake in the bag as well. And we got about, 7 or 8 different restaurants that are doing that. And what we do is we trade social media with them saying, hey, if you go and buy from this place, they'll give you a Q Salt Lake magazine. And we did. We went after we printed. Of course, we couldn't print the entire run that we would normally do, but we went onto social media and said, okay, here's the 40 places where you can get a physical copy of the Q Salt Lake magazine. So
I'm gonna be the awesomest friend you could ever have, and I'm gonna ask you to hold up your current issue, the cover of your current issue of Q Salt Lake, because I thought it was cute. No, that's not the right one.
Well, that's the one we're doing right. Oh no, we haven't printed that. That one goes out tonight.
Oh, the one with the dog.
But this one's cute too. Look, there's me right over here somewhere.
Where are you?
There, right there in the.
Oh yeah, I recognize the nose.
It's the second time I've ever been on my magazine cover.
Oh, that's hysterical. Anyway, the current issue that's being printed has like a French bulldog in drag holding a martini glass, which, oh my
yes.
God. Oh my God.
This was the first that I ever was on the cover. I figure out of 311 issues, I can have 2 that I have me on the cover somewhere.
So listen, you can go to, what's your website, Michael, where they can
QSaltLake.com.
QSaltLake.com. You can, on the new issue that's coming out, you can go to the website and download the digital version, right? The PDF version.
Correct.
And check it out, because the next thing I want to talk about is why are local and regional LGBTQ publications so important? With so many dying and even the nationals dying, why are local and regionals so important?
Well, before I get into that, I do want to say that our current issue, the online issue, we would normally get about 3,000, 4,000. I hope you can edit that out.
This is
live. Okay, well then.
Oh my God!
Sorry about that. It's springtime in Utah.
Before you sneezed, I couldn't stop laughing.
All right. Okay, here we go. No, so normally our issues that are online are read by between 3,000 and 5,000 people. Our Pride issues are read by 8,000 or 9,000 people. And so we put out a big appeal saying, hey, if you can't go get our magazine, please at least read us online. We have over 17,000 reads on this current issue in 3 or 4 weeks that it's been out.
That's awesome.
So what that means to me is we have a community that does want to support an LGBTQ publication, and they want to read the information that's in it. I think it's very right. I think it's important that that we have our own voice, that we have our news told to us in our own voice. I think it's important that we have content that other publications, the more mainstream publications, just don't really care about. So, the fact that the Utah AIDS Foundation has been doing a lot of their support groups and one-on-one counseling by Zoom and by other means is important to us, but it's not important to the general readership of maybe the Salt Lake Tribune. So
go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
It's very important for us to keep our own brand and our own voice. And, this similarly to the Black community has their own magazines. The senior community has their own magazines. The Latino community has their own magazines. And it's very important that we see ourselves reflected in our own publications.
Sure. Now, I want to ask a couple of tough questions. And one of them is, print advertisers traditionally paid more than digital advertisers. So how do you translate a recurring cash flow for let's say a small publication, a local publication, if you're not printing their advertising? Do you find that I know when this first happened, we talked with several other publishers and they were saying that print advertisers were pulling their ads because most of their ads were event focused. And as all these events started to get canceled, they didn't want to obviously advertise. So that is the first wave of loss that you feel that a publication felt during COVID. How do you translate digital advertising to recover that revenue?
So I actually don't believe today that we can. I think that we're shifting gears because of all of this. People understand that they may need to read things online versus actually walk out and grab an issue. And it's more about the advertisers understanding that, yes, eyes on the screen with your ad are just as valuable or maybe even more so than eyes on a page. And it's getting the advertisers to understand that. That being said, I have no intention of not going back to print once things open up again. We lost about 60% of our advertisers for that issue that suddenly wasn't going to go anywhere because we had, I don't know, about 8 advertisers who were advertising an event that was going to happen, and they either didn't know if it was going to happen or they just knew it wasn't. So, but those will come back, and they are going to need to advertise that, hey, here's the new date, and here's where the tickets are and everything. So we know that it'll come back. But we have every intention of going back to print the second that we have the ability to distribute them.
You were just telling me the other day that you were able to apply for and receive some of that stimulus money, which is designed to help publishers stay afloat. But what about the publishers that haven't been able to have that, and they just feel a loss of their revenue?
Yes, they definitely need, those publishers definitely need to reach out and find places that will do grants and that will do loans. Facebook is doing some grants. Locally, our Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce just did a round of grants that, of course, I didn't hear about till it was over. Yeah. But these are the things that we need to do, is reach out and find where those grants are. There's more out there, but I off the top of my head, I don't remember where they are. But
if you
there is money available.
Right. If you go to the NEMA Facebook page, that's National Equality Media Association, a lot of links to these resources are published there. So, but I want to read something to you that I saw on Publishing Executive this morning, and I thought that it was really apropos to this conversation. I'm going to hold up the page. Hopefully it shows the headline. I don't know can you see that?
If you stop moving it, I could. Yeah, and go ahead and lift that up a little bit. The last word didn't show up.
Oh, how's that?
The pandemic and beyond. The reason I'm very skeptical about online-only publications is that we know that there have been local publications that have gone online, and frankly, I've been underwhelmed with their success. And even though they can charge a lot less money for a full-page ad, I just don't see that that's translating into actual brand buys.
I want to read something, Michael, that from this article that I highlighted that I think is exactly to what you're saying. And so this is in the Publishing Executive article. It says, how do publishers need to adapt their digital content strategies right now? And it says, my biggest suggestion would be to produce and distribute an actual print edition that maintains a curated, packaged, and delivered essence of that print version, because readers are comfortable with that type of trustworthy content experience, and it better reflects the brand of most publishers. And I think that you can do that in your digital version of your publication, but really what people trust is the print version. I agree with that, and I also agree that the online version that looks and I'll say feels, with air quotes, similar to that, I think those are going to be successful for us. Mind you, we're very successful now on our website, just doing banner ads and announcements of events online. Sure,
but I agree with you that the reader does need to see something. Now, a silly story. I happen to be married to a millennial, and we get thousands of magazines distributed, dropped off right here on our doorstep. And the second he sees our publication is ready, he goes into his room, he brings up his tablet, and he reads the entire thing on his tablet, even though there's a stack of them right here with you. I mean, he just walked right past them to get there. And that's just the way I think the younger people especially are wanting to interface with our content. And, the fact that we can not only have still photos and stuff in our publication online, we can put video on there. And I'm hoping the next couple of days that when we have our live version on, you'll see that. We asked for people. We're doing a pet edition, so that's why the dog with the martini and the rainbow flag cape is on our cover.
And you asked me, you said, "Is my cover gay enough?" And the answer is yes, it is.
Barely.
Barely. I don't know.
We have had a pet cover that had unicorns and rainbows and pansies on it, so it doesn't beat that one. But there are things, there are hooks that we can do for advertisers and hooks that we can do for our readers that can make the experience of an online version of our print media that much more interesting and much more compelling. Because you can just click on an ad and either it will go to their website or it can even make a phone call. Call this number, boom, they're on their cell phone.
We know about those numbers, those kind of ads.
Wrong numbers. So
I'm going to tell you this too, Michael, is that you make a really valid point, is that those of us publishers, especially in LGBTQ plus media, that are inventive, creative, flexible, and think outside the box are going to be the ones that survive this crisis. The old ways of doing business and publishing are over, and there's a new paradigm that is emerging. I will say that one thing that I can say with confidence is that in the old way, you would print a magazine as your leader. That was the number one thing, and then you would add your digital content as an added value. And I think that is changing. I still think that people want print, but I think that digital is now emerging as the leader, and that print is now your added value. That's the sort of like, hey, I read my content on a tablet or a phone, but I want the magazine. Now, I'm old enough, I know it doesn't look it, but I am old enough. I like to read books. And if I turn the camera around, you can see that I have a library in my studio with real books, because I like the smell of the pages and I like the look and feel of it. And I sit in my chair and I read a book. I still haven't completely gotten accustomed to reading books like on iBooks, even though it's so convenient. But I do get my news from my tablet and my phone more than anything else, any other source. So publishers that recognize that, whether you like it or not, it is a reality that is happening. And I think that is a fundamental change. So the other beautiful thing about digital is, just like this podcast, we're doing it video and audio. You can share that on your website, and people can interact with it. People can comment on it. People can share it. People can click it and like it and all those different things. And that is it's so much easier to have an interactive experience, whereas a page, you can't really do that. And also the shelf life of video and audio content lasts much, much longer. So for this podcast, you can listen to it. You can listen to it again. The video, you can listen to it. It can be shared, multiple times. And so your content has a longer shelf life. So I like those parts of it. I think it's too early to tell whether or not this new paradigm will translate into enough revenue to keep a lot of publishers going.
I think it will, and because frankly, I have been reducing the number of copies that I actually print over the last time, or because I do have an average of 3,000 or 4,000, sometimes 5,000 readers per issue, and so I can still tell people, that I have X amount of people who read my publication, and I don't have to print as many because of that. However, when I distribute every month, they are all gone, so they are all being picked up. So there are a number of people, like you, who like to pick up a piece, a physical piece of the magazine that they can touch and feel.
Yeah,
but what you did say was very true, where sometimes the digital is being the front line of the ad sales. We have a publication in New Jersey who does exactly that. That he kept getting he kept making phone calls and asking people, hey, will you advertise? And well, we're not doing print. Well, okay, well, what about doing our online stuff? Oh yeah, we'll do that. And then I'll throw in the print ad for you, as a value add. So it's completely backwards from what it was a couple of years ago.
Well, also on the digital side, you can add several ads as they drill down on the same page. Whereas on a print version, once you fill up the page, as you know, it's filled. So you have the opportunity to sell more and to make more through the volume, rather if you're taking a discount in the pricing. This brings me up to another point, and this is something that that I can tell you that I'm working on is creating a to get ahead of the curve of this digital content offering. And how do we as LGBTQ plus publishers sort of unify and make our voice? I often say that individually we are a squeak, but together you could be a roar. And how do we take the economic impact that we have on LGBTQ in LGBTQ media and get brands and advertisers on a local, regional, and even a national scale to take us seriously? And how do you accomplish that? And what are your thoughts about that new landscape? What does that look like for you guys?
Well, what I see is we absolutely cannot be, Salt Lake, with our 10 to 18,000 run publication running around trying to find advertisers of any size. We can't find Fortune 500 advertisers to care about us. However, if we are part of an organization or part of a group that can combine together, and we now suddenly have 25 markets in the country that we can print an ad in, or do other online things as well, then suddenly, as you say, we can start to roar.
Right. And I think that is I think we're going to see, I think COVID-19, as horrible as it's been, could end up being a blessing in disguise, specifically for our industry, because it'll force us to unite in order to survive. It's not just now uniting for money and to have greater revenue. It's uniting to survive. And once we unite to survive, then we realize, I think that many publishers will realize that that singular voice can have an impact, can make an inroad, and can get some results. And I wrote in a column that I'm working on right now that says, the old ways of doing business are dying, and we have to make way for a new paradigm in LGBTQ plus media, and that is a larger and more robust digital presence, as well as a revived, slimmed down, and an efficient print process. Now, I was talking to someone earlier that there's only one or two national LGBT publications left, and that's Out and Advocate.
Right.
And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see what you read in the news to know that they are probably not too much longer for this world if things don't change, and I don't think they are changing fast enough. And so what that'll do when those two national publications go away, there'll be a complete vacuum. I think in the first time, that I am aware of, there will not be a national LGBTQ publication.
Right. I mean, the Advocate's been around since, the 70s. It was very much more locally focused on San Francisco back then, but it's been around for a very long time, and it was a bi-weekly, and you could get a subscription, and it was, you talk about how everybody's had to morph and become the new thing. They made all of their money off of what they called the pink pages, which was the classifieds. And obviously classifieds are left way early, and so they've had to dodge and move around just like everybody else and find different ways of making money. And so for the print advertising definitely cannot be the one basket we put all of our eggs in.
Not anymore. I completely agree. And I think that after this COVID-19 crisis is over, I think that's going to be the new reality. And those of us that are forward thinking to get ahead of this digital wave that is coming up, I think behind us, I don't even think it's crested yet, I think are going to be the ones that survive and thrive going forward into the next phase of LGBTQ plus publishing. So Michael, go ahead.
And I truly hope that, some of those who are very much struggling, especially in smaller, populated areas like us, will at least sit back for a while before making a decision on whether they're going to move forward. I do think, I agree with you completely, that there is a way that we can find new monies for them. And if they can just stick it out long enough to at least stay in business for a while, a lot of these publications, this is not a person's main way of making money, of making a living.
Right.
And I hope especially those people will at least keep their product alive long enough to find the new way that we're going to be doing this.
Michael, what advice would you give? We're older. We're the old guard, right?
I'm not older.
We're the seasoned guard. Oh, that sounded kind of German. Hello, I'm the seasoned guard. Anyway, I digress. But,
yes. Never heard that before.
Never heard that before. I don't want to dominate or anything. But what advice would you give to younger LGBTQ plus publishers or would-be publishers or journalists coming up behind us, because they're the ones that are going to take over when we're out of the picture? Like many of us, I will tell you, I'll add this to it. Many of us are 1 or 2 people operations. We don't have like a huge staff. So there's not like a mentorship program in our organization. But what do you say to someone who says, hey, I want to start a publication about my generation? Right? Like you did and many others did.
Right. I think that actually the younger people will know better than we do, because they know what they like to interact with. They know how they like to get their content, whether that might be from, YouTube stars or memes and then TikTok lately. I mean, a lot of them are getting their news from places like that. Most Americans say they get their news from the late night television shows, which is mostly comedy based, but they throw a bunch of news in there and just make fun of the news. That's where they get their news. And so to know that and to know where the younger people are getting their news is to be able to accommodate how they're going to present their news that way.
To add to that question, what organizations would you recommend to a young up-and-coming publisher or somebody starting a magazine, whether it's online, whether it's print or whatever? Tell a little bit about where you think they should affiliate themselves with to help, sort of nurture what they're doing.
Well, of course, I'm going to say qualitymedia.org. Really? I think I might say that. And the reason is we do have a number of people in various stages of their publications who come together. And, every time we have a conference, I have learned so many things. I don't have time to go through and actually act on all of them, but eventually I do. And some of them are immediate. Just put down everything and do this to make your publication thrive. And frankly, I think I'm here in part because I have been able to organize with those people and share those stories. I also think it's important to be a member of your own local chamber of commerce. First off, there's you have a group of businesses who might advertise in your publication, but more importantly, you're supporting your local community, your local business community.
Sure.
And that's important. And then there's the national LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce as well that meets yearly. And they are massive. They are a huge group. They bring in thousands and thousands of people to their national convention every year. And they have a method where you and other businesses around you can certify that you are an LGBTQ owned and operated organization. Those are important things to do. Definitely the National Lesbian and Gay Journalists Association would be a place I would go. And that's mainly to align yourself with people who can provide your content and who have ideas on what your content should be about. So those are some of the places I would absolutely ask that they become part of.
Well, that's perfect. And I think that those are great recommendations, but I want to add a story. Of how I came to be a part of NEMA, right? So I'm an unlikely member of NEMA. I've been a member now for 3 years since I've known you, but I first heard about NEMA through the publisher in Minneapolis, Stephen. And so Stephen invited me to come to Denver, Colorado, to attend a conference. I never heard of NEMA, nor many of the publishers there. And I decided to go. And my husband said to me then, okay, just go there, be quiet, and just listen and learn. Listen, okay, enough with the laughing. You look all red in the face, but
I'm about to burst.
So I went to Denver, and at first I was listening and learning. There's air quotes, learning, and then I met you, and I met some others, and I was like, wow, there are a lot more people similar to me than I thought. I thought I was like all by myself. So when you say you recommend that young publishers join NEMA, I'm telling you that my experience even at my late stage of life was, wow, I suddenly feel camaraderie with all these other publishers that are dealing with the same things I'm dealing with. Payroll, accounts receivable, deadlines, finding good help, the universal thorn in everyone's flesh. Together, salespeople,
Sorry.
Yeah. And you thought I was going to say something else. I know you did. I can tell by your eyes. And so what NEMA did for me was immediately make me feel part of something, part of a group, and the wealth of information just from meeting these people and sharing my story and listening to their stories was uplifting and supportive, was very, I mean, if nothing else, that's what was great. And that's what made me want to join NEMA. And I'm still a member of NEMA 3 years later because I believe in that camaraderie. And at the conferences that Michael, you alluded to, those conferences were fun. I mean, I remember, oh my God, I could tell you so many dinner, so many different times
that's enough.
in Denver that I thought I would. But we just had fun at dinner, and it was, talking and sharing. And I left there. I get goosebumps right now just thinking about it. And the founder of NEMA, Jerry Cunningham, who's also the publisher of Outfront in Denver, exposed me to what it was like to be part of a supportive group, not a competitive group. And I think that's important, is that everybody in NEMA, everybody at that first conference and ever since, have always been willing to share their experiences and their knowledge freely and without hesitation. And I think that is so important. And I hope that if there's a young publisher out there listening or considering being in LGBT publishing, that they reach out to Michael and the board of directors or whoever the membership people are to align themselves with NEMA. And it doesn't have to be print. You could be a digital content creator. You can be a blogger. You can be an influencer. Anyone that creates LGBTQ content should be a part of NEMA. And it's a great environment to foster and grow new talent and new ideas and new enterprises. And the wealth and the breadth, depth, and wealth of experience within NEMA itself is its number one asset for anyone. And if I would have known about NEMA years prior, when I first ventured into publishing, geez, all the heartache I probably would have still gone through, but at least I could go through it with everybody else. But I would have learned so much, because those conferences are not just about getting together and having a good time. Every conference that I've been to, the NEMA has had speakers talking about new trends and innovations in publishing and ways to monetize what you already have, ways to improve your both print and digital component of what you're doing. So it's a great organization to be a part of. And I'm going to put it up on my website. I'll put a link to membership or to email to NEMA, so that anyone that hears this podcast and wants to become a member of NEMA, that they will be able to reach out to the organization. So
that's awesome.
Oh, go ahead.
One of the things that I got out of the conference is I've talked to many people, in fact, almost all of them since. And the first thing they get out of this is, oh, I'm not the only one who has no idea what I'm doing. And that's a big thing to at least understand, that you are not alone in your desperate tries to do, to kludge together, with Band-Aids and paper clips, a publication. And since I started going to the NEMA conferences and meeting all of these people, I mean, I begged for years for an organization that would allow me in. I mean, there was a gay
Well,
a gay
if they did
publication.
background checks, that's probably what prevented it.
But there was a national gay publication group, but you had to be in the top 25 markets. You had to publish weekly. I mean, they had all these restrictions that I couldn't do. I mean, I was publishing bi-weekly, in Salt Lake City with a population, of about 3 million people, in our entire metropolitan area. Maybe not even that, maybe 2 million people. So, I was this little, I was a big fish in a little pond, but I was still a little fish.
Right.
And
compared to the nationals.
Right. And then, but now all of a sudden, Jerry came, called me up out of the blue and to me out of the blue. And he said, "Hey, we've got this organization of gay publishers and I want to invite you to it." And I said, "Where do I sign?" I didn't even listen to his spiel. I didn't even have to. He did it anyway. But I had been just begging for something like that. And when it finally came around, I had to be part of it.
Excellent. I want to bring up a point that is something that I think is really interesting. Is you brought up this other organization where you had all these bigger players and they were in the top 25 markets or whatever it was at the time, or 12 markets or whatever it is. But in this new paradigm, all of the nationals are gone. Frontiers magazine in Los Angeles is gone. Left a big vacuum on the West Coast. As the market starts to condense, where people are reading national news, I believe that regionals and locals are going to reassert themselves as the go-to to find out what's happening in your community. Right. The national publications, if they survive, will report what's happening on a broader scale in the country and around the world. But really, I want to know what's going on in my community. Like, I live in Chicago. We're based in Chicago. I want to know what's going on here. What's happening here? What about the Pride events and the market days that are here in Chicago? What's that happening? How is it affecting me in my daily life? I think that the comment that you made earlier is that if publishers can just hang on, I think what will happen is we are being forced to confront some of the things that may not have worked as well in the past, and we're now making those adjustments. And part of that adjustment is a leaner, more efficient print version, new ways to distribute, maybe through a paid subscription, or different ways to offer a free distribution at, like you said, at grocery stores. And then secondly is have our online presence. Now, one thing you said a while back that I remember, you said, you went to social media and you started blasting out, "Hey, we're not going to be here anymore, but you can find us here." Use your social media, use your website to communicate with your readers, and that can drive traffic. And that eventually will justify you asking for advertising revenue for your website.
And something else that, when the inevitable happens and our national publications are gone, I basically never do national news on our website or in our magazine other than a page of briefs. And I think it's going to, for a while anyway, while this shifts gears, I think it's going to be up to us to put out national news as well.
I think it's up to you guys to save, in my opinion, my honest opinion, I think it's going to be up to local and regional publications to save LGBTQ media. I believe that.
I agree. I completely agree.
Because when these nationals go away, as you said, there's going to be a huge vacuum and people are going to look to see what's happening in their communities. And not every community has a gay publication, or I should strike that, LGBTQ plus publication. So in those markets, like even Salt Lake City, Nashville, Phoenix, some of the not top tier markets, but important markets, without those local publications, Echo Magazine in Phoenix, Out and About Nashville, and now in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Without those publications, the local LGBTQ plus community is not going to know what's going on in their community if the national magazines are gone. And I think that is the future. And I also believe that if these publications can utilize social media to keep the lines of communication open, I think that's going to be important. Now, I want to talk about I want to talk about advertising a little bit, because this is the lifeblood. This is the real the sore spot for many publishers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of LGBTQ publications rely on Pride advertising, right? To provide a majority of their income for the year, right? Mm-hmm. Because every brand, every agency, all of a sudden becomes gay-centric in June. Like, we don't shop in July or September. We're only in June. We don't travel any of those months. That's a whole other story that we can talk about after this. But with the advent of COVID-19 and the loss of event-specific advertising, mm-hmm. many publishers are not going to get their Pride advertising as usual. So what would you say to those publishers if you were sitting at a round table on what they can do to convince advertisers to stick with them?
What I would ask the other advertisers and other publishers are what are your ideas to still move forward? It was important to those organizations to say that they were LGBTQ friendly businesses, that they felt important, that we are an important part of their own communities, of their own businesses, and they still need to be able to do that. And one thing is, I'm sure you're aware that there's an international, worldwide attempt to put together a Pride that is all online for the day of, it's actually on my birthday, of June 27th.
I just made
just happens to be, yeah. And I think it's important that we still have a Pride Month. I know other publications are working on that, saying June is Pride Month, or whether we're having a Pride or not, and trying to put together a Pride package for them that will align with this global attempt to do this. That's one option of doing that, because everybody knows June is Pride Month. And like I said, whether it's an actual event or not shouldn't really matter to those advertisers.
Right, because Pride is a feeling. It's not a specific thing. It's like, this is our Pride Month. This is how we feel this month. We're recognizing, people that came before us. We're celebrating the strides that we've been able to make up to this point. It's a feeling. So one of the things that I've always talked about is in the law, if you have a loss of event specific advertising, now is a good time to pivot to talking to these brands and agencies and say, okay, well, listen, you need to still maintain a level of communication with the community. And you can do that through print, and maybe in a diminished way, but you can certainly do it a lot further through digital. And you can do it through website advertising, podcast, sponsorships. Did you like that? I thought that was.
It was awesome. The pregnant pause was, yes.
I thought.
I think that there's a lot of advertising right now on the television that says, "Hey, we understand. We get what you're going through. We're going through it too. We're still here. We think we're all important. We're going to get through this together." And I think there's that kind of messaging that can happen towards the LGBTQ community that needs to happen. And I think, it's a little more difficult to sell that because it's a lot more talking than just, hey, Pride's coming up. You want to get an ad? Yeah. It's more selling a concept that hasn't been done before. And frankly, I think it needs to happen. And frankly, I think it needs to have been happening all along in July and August and September and October and November, December, because we're not, like you said, we're not just gay in June, so those are the important things, is that the message that needs to get out is that, yes, our community is very important to them, and there are X, Y, and Z examples of why that might happen. And they need to put it out in June and July and August and September.
That's right. And I read something that I was trying to look for while you were speaking and I was listening to you that I thought was so, here it is. I want to read this. Somebody posted this today and I thought this was so apropos. It says, this is from John Runberg, who is the creative marketing director of Diviner of Insights. And it says, I respect the brands that demonstrate their commitment rather than just say it. If we're quote unquote in this together, then show the consumer how you're supporting them and then the communities that they love. And what it made me realize is that this is a conversation that you can have, is that a brand, can't just say, hey, we're going to pull all of our ads because the events got canceled, and we're going to put our outreach to the LGBTQ plus community and consumer on hold, and then expect that there's going to be any sort of brand loyalty. They need to demonstrate, not just by saying we're all in this together, they need to demonstrate it through their actions that they are. And the one way of doing that is to support LGBTQ plus publications that are the direct conduit to the market that they seek to reach. That's one of the things you and I have talked about on many occasions, and that is that, you can blast out your message and hope that you're going to reach the LGBTQ community through mainstream media, but the best and most efficient and most effective way to reach that market is through a local LGBTQ publication or podcast or social media or influencer or website or what have you. And that's what they need to do. And that's what publishers need to do. They need to start that conversation now in preparation for Pride, to say, listen, there may not be a Pride parade. There may not be in Chicago market days, but that doesn't mean that you can't reach that consumer, because everyone is buying online. My own husband does that. It's like Jeff Bezos is like a trazillionaire now because of the COVID-19 thing. But commerce isn't stopping. And I just posted an article today that I saw in Forbes, and I want to read it to you. So let me just pull it up here really quick, that I thought was great. And this is about travel, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people were saying that, it's going to take forever for travel to come back, right? But a new survey taken by Overseas Leisure Group, which is a luxury travel operator in 34 countries, said that American consumers under lockdown are ready to start planning for future travel now.
Right.
And so what I have been saying, and I'm going to say this to you, and I'm sure you've heard me say it, is that while a lot of publishers, and I'm speaking specifically to LGBTQ plus publishers, are sort of being crushed under the weight of what's happening as a result of COVID-19, I think we should be planning for what we're going to be doing once this is over. Because those of us that can keep our heads about ourselves and can keep afloat and prepare ourselves and position ourselves to come out of the backside of this, that we will be in the best position to when those dollars start to flow. And one of the things that I'm personally doing for several things is I'm reaching out to brands and agencies and saying exactly what I just told you. We're going to remember if you didn't support us. If these are all just words, that's fine. But you need to take some action. So let us start talking now about what we're going to do together when this is over, because it will be over, believe it or not.
They advertisers forget very quickly that the time to advertise is when you're down. And the time they always advertise is when they're up, because they have all kinds of money. Oh yeah, we've got money, we'll go ahead and advertise. But no, the important part is to do it while you're down, and then what that ends up doing, hopefully, is brings you business now when you are struggling for it. So the advertisers I've talked to locally, and I did have a few that did have to pull, just because they had to cut their sure. They're making no money. Their lease is still going to happen, whether the lease payment is going to happen, whether they're making money or not, those kinds of things. So they did have to pull. But the first thing they said was, the second we can open up again, we are in and we're going to push, because we know we need to fill these seats up again.
Well, here's the thing. That's great to hear, because this is also part of why it's so important to maintain communication, so that there's no big gap in between your last communication and the current communication, so that when they're ready to, it's just a matter of, hey, okay, we're ready, you're ready, that's great, let's move forward. But I also want to say this, that I think that is I think is apropos, and that is you can be having this conversation now. You don't have to wait. You can be having this conversation now, and it doesn't have to be print advertising. You use social media or website or any other any of the other digital platforms that you can be promoting them on. It doesn't cost you anything to put their banner ad on the website too much. You know what I mean?
Right.
But,
sure.
And so if you can maintain that connection to them, they'll remember it. Secondarily, is I believe that LGBTQ consumers, according to the CMI survey, are super loyal, brand loyal, and all of that. So if these brands, if these advertisers demonstrate through their actions that they are supporting either an LGBTQ publication or community by advertising, then when it's time to purchase a product or service, I think the LGBTQ community is going to remember that and will give them the benefit of that loyalty. They'll reap the benefit of that loyalty. This also comes to, another point that I want to ask you about, and that is, how do you in a smaller market like Salt Lake City, how do you coalesce the support of a whole community when you have in a crisis like this? Now, I know that during the HIV crisis, they called it the gay disease, right?
The gay plague.
The gay plague. So during COVID-19, how are you personally handling how you're covering COVID-19?
So our coverage is more about what you can be doing while you're sitting in your house and how you can support and connect to your community. So there are a number of arts organizations that are being very creative and actually going ahead and producing the play or whatever it was they were going to be showing, and finding ways that they could work out all the contracts that they could at least show it online for 2 weeks. And of course, that means your publication, your LGBTQ publication needs to put it out to the community that, yes, this is going to happen. And here are the times and how you can go ahead and watch that. We have to be very creative in basically every aspect of our business right now. And as they're being creative, we have to be creative in ways that we can help promote them. We're lucky here in Salt Lake because we have a very active community. We're this little tiny blue dot in this great big red sea. And so we understand the concept of being the underground and all of that, to the point where we have become Salt Lake City. You cannot be mayor without courting the LGBTQ electorate. And in fact, we just our lesbian mayor just was replaced by another very much an ally just this year. So we've had gay and lesbian and bisexual leaders in our community who, elected officials in our community since the 90s. And that's because we have a community that does talk to each other. And so, yes, if we are forgotten for some reason for this difficult time, you're going to be forgotten in the future as well. People have long memories about these things.
I want to ask you, I know you probably heard this question 100,000 times.
I'm not Mormon.
I was just going to say, how does an LGBTQ publication and community survive in the center of Mormonism?
Frankly, the way Mormons are is mostly they're very nice to your face, and mostly they want to kind of believe what you're saying, and they want you to be part of their community. Mostly, do you ever get overt pushback or overt anything? We always thought we were going to. And gosh, like I said, I've been doing this, the 80s and definitely from the 90s on. Never really had a problem. We had a pushback on one cover of our magazine back in 1992. And frankly, I probably deserved it. I had a sketch of a pregnant woman who wasn't wearing a top. And yeah, that was kind of a little bit too much for them. Probably. But we are published in a very Mormon town. We're actually printed, I should say, in a very Mormon town just over the border in Idaho. Never had a problem with them. And in fact, the driver will come down and he'll say, "Oh, I love your publication because you've got that drag queen on the last page. And I just love reading all of her stories." And I'm like, God, some of those are so risque. I can't believe.
Yeah, but I'm gonna sort of probably push the envelope here a little bit. But I have seen those videos.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I can't. I can't. But I'm just gonna say, yes, I have a new affection for some Mormons. Let's just say
those videos. I was like, what is he talking about? And the other thing is, there is a tremendous group of people in the LDS community that is just really, really wanting to love their sons and daughters and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles. They, whatever the people at the head say, they just think, "Oh, those are the old people," and they're 90, so they'll probably die tomorrow anyway. And so these are the people who are going to move that church forward. And yeah, it's going to be a very slow ride, and it has been a very slow ride. But frankly, I've gotten zero pushback from the LDS Church. In fact, I've had many conversations with their PR people, and they've been very good to work with.
Interesting. I wouldn't have expected that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Now, and I've had really good conversations with. There was a local group that believed that they could change you to being a straight guy and marry a woman, and and all that stuff. And frankly, I have really good relationships with some of the most ultra-conservative, anti-LGBT, what we consider anti-LGBT people in the Valley. And frankly, they're really not the evil people that people will scream about. And you will never hear or read anything in our publication where there's a name calling about something. Yeah, if they say something bad, we can say, yeah, that was stupid. But they're not stupid. What they said was stupid.
So I'm going to throw you a bone here. This is the final segment here, but this will be something fun for our listeners. Donald Trump.
I was going to tell you all about my Clorox mule here that I was just sitting here drinking. It was delicious.
I want to just talk about, in a broader sense, I want to talk about it. I want to talk about credibility, right? So media credibility specifically. Mm-hmm. And this is a lead into a future show that I'm working on about media credibility. And I think that, and I always say this, and I've said this in the past, is that credibility in media is one thing. It's falling. It's trusted less than Congress in some cases. But in LGBTQ plus media, especially, I believe that we are held to such a higher standard, right? So how do you as a publisher make sure that you get it right when you're reporting about hot button issues like COVID-19? Right? What are the facts? And I know you and I have had this discussion online several times, and we don't always agree, but I am a Facebook certified infectious disease specialist.
Yes.
All kidding aside, though, but on a topic...
You graduated from Trump University.
Yes. On a topic like this, I just had this conversation the other day is, who do you trust? Who do you trust? For everything that you want, every narrative that you want to put out there, you can find a graph, you can find a statistic that supports that. Right. But where do we get accurate information? If you can't get it from I won't mention any names, but some people don't trust the CDC or even WHO anymore. Right. If you can't get it from there, where does someone like me, who's stuck in the house with Joe for now 5 weeks, I want to know when the end is. I want to know what I can do, not to get it. And by the way, just an FYI to our listeners, I am one of the high risk group people. I'm 59. I have type 2 diabetes. Thank God I've never been really sick, but I don't want to be sick. So I'm practicing social distancing. I'm wearing a mask. Now it's mandated in Illinois. I don't know if you heard that. As of May 1st, if you go outside, you have to wear a mask.
Wow.
And so I'm thinking to myself, where am I getting this information? Where can I get information where I have a trusted source, right? So I don't watch the Trump briefings anymore, believe it or not. I don't watch them because they're so painful, number one. And number two is I don't really want to get in the middle of a political fight. I don't want to hear from politicians. I want to hear from medical professionals that say, okay, here's what's happening. This is what's going on. This is what you need to do to protect yourself. And if we do this, this will happen and blah, 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 blah. So how in your publication, I know that you report on this, how do you make sure that you get it right, that you're giving not biased information, not ideologically, you know what I mean? How do you just say, okay, listen, folks, here's the truth and here are the real facts. You may not like them, but here they are.
So, I mean, imagine doing a publication in our community back in the 80s and 90s. There were, back then, if there was a story about, a gay person did this, they would always have to go over to the Eagle Forum and ask what Gail Ruzicka is our local Eagle Forum person, what she thought about that. And something, when we are putting out information, that's something that we can say, okay, here's where we start. We're not where everybody else is, where you have to give, what they considered both sides. We know the other side is wrong. We know that, yes, love equals love. We know that we absolutely have the right to live our lives the way we want, especially behind closed doors. And so that's where we started. So what some people might call a bias is what we already know is true as a community that they're going to have to catch up with. And so that has followed us up until today, where you have to find the information and remove the politics from it. And so our information that we put out from, about COVID-19 and people who have HIV and or AIDS, that came from an agreement we had with Pause Magazine, that they have the information from the right sources. And I didn't have to go out and find, and pull politics out of it, because I found somebody who understands the health and medical part of all this. The other things that we're focusing on right now really has more to do with, this event is not going to happen, and here's where it is, here's what's going to happen in the future and all of that. But as far as when it really comes down to like the health and everything, we partner with national organizations and national media publications who can do it better than we can.
So you're not recommending anyone drink bleach?
Oh, I should stop doing that?
Well, the reason why I make that point, I know make a little bit of a jest here, but the reason why I make that point is, as a publication, especially in our community, trust is key. It's paramount. You have to trust the source. And I'm gonna end this conversation with this thought, and that's something that came to me a while back. And I know you think that I'm maybe a little bit, I lean to the right, but the truth of the matter is I lean towards the truth a little bit. I hate bullies on any level, from the left or the right, and I'm trying to navigate in the middle. And sometimes I find myself in a no-win situation. Someone called me a fucking creep who takes pictures because I was taking pictures of people in the park who weren't social distancing. They were working out on the workout machines, or I disagree with Governor Pritzker, and I do a little bit of homework about my favorite mayor to hate, and that's de Blasio in New York. And so, but Trump is a different animal. He's crazy. I mean, I'm doing my absolute best to try and find something that I can hang on to that says, okay, it's getting harder and harder. Okay. But here's the thing. My thought is I don't give two shits about politics right now. I could care less about any election or any politics or any of that. One of the things that I'm going to say, and this is my political rant for the day, is the first and foremost obligation of any government is to take care of its fucking people. And the fact that they're fighting over money, or these big corporations are getting large shares of the money, or the Democrats are stuffing the CARES Act bill, or the Republicans are doing this or whatever, pisses me off. So what I sort of wonder, like when I read my news, I try and read a cross section and say, okay, that's not true, or that's not true, or that's not true. Here's something I came up with. When I grew up, many years ago, you probably remember, my parents watched Walter Cronkite.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You remember him?
Absolutely.
And I remember my parents, like, whatever he said was the truth. Like,
Absolutely.
you totally trusted him. He was beyond reproach and everything and what have you. I think that nowadays we don't have that. We don't have somebody that we trust. So you listen to Anderson Cooper, who's very hot, by the way, and I met him in person, talk about one thing, and then you listen to Fox News, and it sounds reasonable, but then you research and you're like, oh, that's not 100% true. And then you talk to this person, that's not 100% true. And so little bits of pieces make sense, but we don't have that trusted source. And my question, going back to you, is how do you as a publisher make your publication a trusted source? And your response is correct, is you get accurate information. But I'm telling you, to watch these people protesting to open up things and not wear masks and whatever, they don't get it. They don't get it. That's not political.
And if I could add one more level to that, that is to be careful with headlines. Every publication, right, left, middle, or whatever, I've seen do these horrible headlines where they say, so-and-so says this. And you actually read the article, and so the headline is just overly dramatic. It's, yeah, we're going to be here until 2022. You're not going to be able to get out of your house until 2022 because that's what Fauci said. And then you read the story that they wrote themselves, and you read, well, wait a minute, maybe he didn't really actually say that. But, people headline surf. That's how they get most of their information. They just read the headline and believe, okay, that's what that whole story is about. And all it does is cause fear. All it does is cause a lot of angst between our communities. And to be honest with your headline, I think is so important. And I'm thinking, I don't see our media doing it for a long time.
I agree with you. And I'm going to end this with this. Intellectual laziness. We are our consumer of news, of sound bites and talking points. We don't want to, and the point to wrap up my conversation about Walter Cronkite, we don't want to do any homework, right? But we don't have a Walter Cronkite, because I remember my dad saying, well, I don't have to find out about this because he already did that work. And so he's telling me the summary of what the story is. We don't have that. We have presenters, news presenters that really just want to grab us and they want to get an emotional response. And so I see that there is a huge need for intellectual integrity in the way we're reporting what we're writing about. It's one thing to editorialize, because that's your opinion. You can have it, whatever opinion you want. But when you're reporting what is the accurate facts, the facts are indisputable. You may not like it, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a fact. I think that LGBTQ media, number one, is held to a higher standard to make sure we get it right. We have to get it right, because the minute we don't get it right, we're immediately labeled as biased or what have you. And I think in today's environment where everyone has a voice, I mean, anyone can post anything on social media. Anyone, can have an opinion and it can go viral. So there's no vetting, there's no anything. So it's a race to the bottom, if you will. I personally would hope that LGBTQ media would resist that. And really, this is our opportunity. In my view, this is our opportunity to stand up and shine and say, hey, this is what everyone else is doing, but we're providing you real information. Because, Michael, I'll tell you, and this is deadly serious, I still don't know what the hell is going on. I don't. I don't think anybody actually knows what's going to go on. All they have is the idea of what they think might happen. Well, I don't know what the hell is going on. Like, I asked, okay, if in the beginning, they said, oh, only hospital workers have to wear masks. Well, if it's dangerous enough that they have to wear a mask, why shouldn't I have to wear a mask? And since when is Walmart, Home Depot, and Binny's liquor store considered essential businesses? If they're open, why are other small businesses closed? Like, there's a lot of disconnect there. And the second thing is like this, I definitely don't feel like the government has really done even an adequate job of saying, hey, this is what's going on and this is what you should be expecting. So that breeds fear. I I want to make sure that you have enough toilet paper. I still don't understand the whole toilet paper hoarding thing.
Yes.
I mean, I don't get that. But so I think that's the problem that I have is if you asked me on a serious level, what is COVID-19? Why are we so fearful? Why is this so much more why are we so much more fearful of this than any of the other hundreds of COVID
coronaviruses?
Yeah, coronavirus is out there. And I was just telling producer Nick that I think one of the things that I've sort of come upon is it's not the virus that bothers much, because the people at risk that could get the virus would be at risk in a lot of other things. It's just that if they get it, it's like 10 times worse than a regular flu. But the thing that scares me is the contagiousness of it. There's no stop. There's no stop. So I'm planning on getting it. I hope I just get it and I don't have any symptoms, but I'm not taking any chances. I think that's the problem. The problem is the contagiousness of it. There is no stop. And now we have to wait until hopefully they have a vaccine. But I think that the reason why I wanted to have you on here, I know when I asked you, you said, well, what am I going to talk about? This is what we're going to talk about is what is our role in our communities when national sources of information is so convoluted and so all over the map. This is an opportunity for you to speak to your community and say, hey, this is what you need to do to be prepared. And this is the real information. Don't listen to politicians or anything. Listen to this is it. And I think that is the value and will be the ongoing value of local and regional media, in my opinion. So we're going to close here. And one thing I'm going to say, I want to tell my readers that I love this man. We have been spirit animals since the day we met. We don't agree on just about anything politically.
Nothing.
Nothing politically. But yet he still agreed to come on my podcast. So I want to make sure that I give a big shout out to Michael Aaron, the publisher of Q Salt Lake. And if you have the opportunity to pick up his current edition and his new edition that's coming out soon with the awesome French Bulldog and drag on the front cover, the pet issue, make sure you go to qsaltlake.com. Is that right, Michael?
That's correct.
qsaltlake.com. And if you're an advertiser in Salt Lake or the surrounding areas and you hear this podcast for some reason, maybe all 2 or 3 of you that are listening to the podcast, if you have a few extra bucks, make sure you support Michael Aaron and Q Salt Lake. Throw some advertising on their website or social media, and he would be wonderful to work with, I'm sure, and he would take care of you. So, Michael, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast. When this is edited, and producer Nick will edit it and make it look all pretty and make you sound really smart, I'll send you the link and feel free to use it, and you can put it on your stuff and whatever. And I will do the same thing, and I'll link back. We'll link back and forth. All right. I do have one thing I have to say. Oh no! Wait a minute. Should I be girding myself for it?
And that's the way it is.
I'm done. This show is over. All right. I'll see you soon. Love you.
Bye.
All right. Take care. Bye.
You can find all the episodes of The DJ Doran Show on my website, djdoran.com, or on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Deezer, CastBox, and Podomatic, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes as they are available. And be sure to follow The DJ Doran Show on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.